Hey everyone, Demetrio Nisco here, and thank you for wanting to watch my presentation today titled Tourette's OCD ADHD Got Nothing on Me. And as you can tell from the title screen, it is all about how my path through learning about proper nutrition, fitness, and meditation techniques, I should say, actually became my path towards success in controlling my disorder. So let's go on ahead and just get started. A little bit about me so you kind of know who's behind the voice today. I am a graduate of Purdue University with a degree in health and fitness. So, health and nutrition and exercising has always been an important part of my life anyway, in part because of the Tourette's itself, which we'll get more into later. I am also owner of Onisco Concepts and Design, which is really just a random product company where I can work on product ideas that I have in my basement and bring them to the marketplace. And I'm also a director of an online fitness and nutrition education company. So I have a lot on my plate right now, but I really felt it was important to get this information out to people like yourselves who are struggling with Tourette's and OCD and even hyperactivity disorders to try and help you gain control in the fight for your body, essentially. But before we get into all that, we actually need to start over, and I want to take a step back and even get into how this all started, how this path towards or through nutrition and fitness and meditation got me to where I am today. And as you can see on the screen, that is a little picture of me when I was younger. I did sport the Superman curl, I am proud to say to this day, even though I don't have any hair now, I kind of wish I did. But the whole thing started back when I was 7 years old. I was always a hyperactive child, and my parents just wanted the best for me. And through discussing with my teachers at the time, they felt that it would be most beneficial for me if I went into a doctor to get their opinion on how to help me better focus. And so they took me to the doctor, and they actually diagnosed me with ADHD, which stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder. At the time, it was more commonly referred to as just ADD. And so, because of that diagnosis, they decided to put me on the prescription drug at the time, which was used fairly common for children diagnosed with ADD, and it was called Ritalin. And the drug itself is supposed to kind of help calm the child and make it easier for them to pay attention in school throughout the day. Again, my parents just wanted the best, so they decided to go with the doctor's prescription and give it a shot. Now, over the next few weeks, my parents never necessarily liked the idea of having me on medication at such an early age, but because they wanted me to, do well in school, they decided to give it a shot. And they could tell it did change my personality. However, it did help me improve in terms of paying attention in school, so they thought it was a good avenue to go. However, one day when I was in class, just out of nowhere, I started, according to my teacher at the time, shaking my head 70 to 80 times a minute, up and down and left to right, over and over again. And my parents immediately thought it was because of the Ritalin, somehow stimulated my system in a negative way and caused this head shaking to come out. And they immediately took me back to the doctor. And through some discussion with the doctor, I was properly diagnosed with Tourette's. And as a result, I was taken off of the medication. And through kind of some self-reflection on my parents' part, they decided to take me down a different path, which is what we're going to be going over today, to help me get control over my Tourette's instead of going the route of medication and trying to medicate myself to subduing the disorder itself. So today, we'll review my overall path to control, starting at the beginning of where I just was, all the way through my high school and college years to kind of get me to where I am now. And don't worry about taking any notes. If you want a copy of the presentation slides and also a detailed write-up about what I will be discussing with you today, feel free to email me at oniscoconcepts@gmail.com. And my email address is on my website. You can just go to the Contact Us information bar or the Contact Us link at the top of the website, and it'll be right there as well. So getting started, there are three avenues that I went through when I was younger with the assistance of my parents to a certain extent that helped me gain control of my Tourette's. And the three areas are starting off with nutrition. It was kind of the first area. And I consider this the foundation of my path to control. And included in this section, I will also discuss a topic about vitamin supplementation and the importance of it. Now, exercise is the next area that I kind of ran into a little later on in my childhood in terms of understanding and realizing the importance of regular exercise to help subdue and control my Tourette's. And I consider this kind of like the reinforcement behind the fight towards controlling my body. And then finally, I discovered last the meditation methods, which I kind of consider to be the last resort anyway, and we'll get into that a little bit more later about why I consider it the last resort. And included in this last section is a little special area I like to call distractions, and we'll get into more later why I consider it the battlefield of controlling and subduing our disorders. So the first topic, nutrition. Again, shortly after my parents found out that I had Tourette's, both my parents have always been a kind of holistic people, my mom especially, and she loved reading these this magazine series called Prevention Magazine, and she remembered reading in it one day of a doctor named Dr. Benjamin Feingold. He was a kind of like a nutritionist that did a lot of research in nutrition, and there was an article in the magazine about how he did a study of over 1,200 cases of children and found a link between certain food additives like caffeine, sugar, preservatives, and color additives, and how they were linked to learning and behavioral disorders. So this case was specifically for children that had the ADD/ADHD. And his link was, when a child were to, say, ingest a lot of sugar or caffeine, that would then create a state of hyperactivity within them, and then it would lead to them not being able to pay attention in class compared to if they were to stay away from these stimulants altogether. And my mom realized and kind of linked the fact that if caffeine, sugar, and all these preservatives and whatnot had a negative stimulating effect on children who were sensitive to hyperactive tendencies, and it was almost like they was negatively stimulating their nervous system, why would it not be the same thing for somebody that has Tourette's or obsessive compulsive disorder? I guess one thing to mention before I go any further is I did struggle with OCD-like tendencies when I was younger, and the Tourette's syndrome itself is kind of an umbrella syndrome. So you do get a mingling and a mix of OCD-like tendencies and Tourette's tendencies. Because when it comes down to it, whether you're flipping a white light switch repetitively or needing to shake your head repetitively, that is an obsessive compulsive trait. And it's one that I feel can be treated all the same in terms of what we're going over today, because they all relate back to the nervous system, I feel at least, being overstimulated. And I want to help you guys understand how you can properly stimulate your nervous system and smooth things out in your life so you're not negatively stimulating it in any way, causing your tics or your disorder to want to come out and express itself. So getting back to the case in point, my mom discussed this with my father, and they decided what they would do to start me down the proper path is my mom would stay home and start making all of the meals for the family from scratch. And then my dad would pick up extra shifts at the factory he worked at as a maintenance engineer. So he was working double shifts for months on end, and my mom was at home taking care of myself and my sisters. And so what she did is She started me with every meal, eating nothing but bananas and rice pudding every day for each meal for the first few days. She essentially used me as a guinea pig, and this was kind of like her baseline start. So she started me on those two food groups for each meal because they have the lowest allergic reaction in people, and she felt like it was the best place to start to ensure that my Tourette's being affected by nutrition, that the rice pudding and bananas was just a good place to start, that it wouldn't have a negative effect on my system at all, and she could really give a good reading when every few days she would add in a new food, such as pepperoni, and then watch me a few hours after. And if she noticed that my tics were starting to come out and express themselves, then there was something in that food that was negatively stimulating my nervous system, and that would be put on the list of foods that I would have to avoid. And just so you know, that pepperoni, it does contain usually a red dye number 40 in it. At least it did at the time when I was a kid. And according to Dr. Fengold, food colorings, especially red dye 40, they can build up in the system, in your system, such that it starts blocking certain receptors in your body that negatively affect your nervous system, and then that can lead to the Tourette's wanting to come out. So my mom did this for months, just trial and error, trying new foods, and having me eat them and then watch me for a few hours. And she found out overall that the ones that Dr. Fengold identified are the same types of things that I can't eat also. Now, lucky for you, you don't have to do this for yourself or do this to your children, because there's certain things that universally you know now that you need to avoid. So you need to make sure to avoid all kinds of caffeine. Okay, foods with a lot of sugars in them can be detrimental also. Foods with a lot of preservatives or additives, like especially candy, because they're heavily dyed with colors, and they have a lot of artificial additives in there to help maintain the shelf life of the candies. You need to avoid all that kind of stuff and start gearing your life more towards a organic and holistic eating style. Now, with all that in mind, don't panic. It's not something you have to do all in one day, okay? The thing to keep in mind is you want to be patient with this and do little changes every week. So, if you're not accustomed to maybe eating healthy, really the best way to do it is to start again with one meal at a time. So, let's say, for example, and this is a rough example, that every morning for breakfast you eat a caffeinated beverage. You have a thing of coffee for breakfast with 4 scoops of sugar in it, and then with that you have 2 donuts. Okay, and definitely not the healthiest meal. You know, it has a lot of sugar in it, a lot of simple carbohydrates, which is unhealthy regardless of what disorder you are or are not struggling with. And then also the caffeine in the coffee itself is a stimulant to the nervous system. So what you want to do is, starting off with week 1, and you can start this week with it, you want to go from every morning having the cup of coffee with 4 scoops of sugar and the 2 donuts to switching to the 1 cup of coffee with the 4 scoops of sugar, 1 donut, and 1 banana. Okay? And before I go any further, I do want to mention that if you have any specific issues that you're struggling in life with, like let's say you also have diabetes or high cholesterol, be sure to reach out to a registered dietitian and your healthcare provider before you make any major nutritional changes. Really, all that I'm going through today is more standard nutritional choice changes, going from eating a donut to something healthier like a banana. But if you have any specific restrictions that I'm not aware of, be sure to reach out to a professional first before making any of these changes, because I just want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success and you're not eating anything that you shouldn't be eating without the consent of a professional first. But getting back to my example, so switch from the 2 donuts to the 1 donut and a banana that first week. Week 2, switch to still having the cup of coffee with the 4 scoops of sugar and a banana, and instead of the one donut, switch to having like a yogurt, and not a yogurt that's like a Boston cream flavor, because a lot of times those flavored yogurts have a ton of sugar in them to make them taste like the pie or the cake that you're wanting it to. So go for more of a like a low fat Greek yogurt, maybe sweeten it with a little bit of honey. And then week 3, you still have your cup of coffee, but scoops. And then the week after, instead of having a full cup of, when you go to make the coffee, if you put 4 scoops of instant coffee in your coffee maker that's caffeinated, switch to doing 2 scoops of caffeinated coffee and then 2 scoops of decaf coffee. So you're slowly weaning your body away from the old forms of food and energy sources, and starting to set yourself up for success of being able to take in those new nutritional choices without setting yourself up for failure and regression back to what you were normally eating. Now, a few good websites you can go to as you get more and more involved in changing your diet is 2 websites my wife and I really like to use. One is called Forks Over Knives, and you can just go to forksoverknives.com, and also minimalistbaker.com, and they're really good about holistic or organic eating, minimal amount of ingredient foods, and quick meals that can start helping you when you get into changing your meal plan completely. It's just a great resource to go to. So just kind of keep those in mind as you start changing your nutritional habits. Now, getting back to like by being patient when you change your nutritional habits, you will have done 2 things. You'll, one, prevent your body from wanting to revert back. So if if you're anything like me, I'm very much a creature of habit and like eating this pretty much similar thing day in and day out. If you immediately try to switch up your eating habits every meal in one day, your body's not going to know necessarily what to do with all that food, and you're going to end up feeling worse than what you did the day before. And also, secondly, you won't feel overwhelmed, because this is a big lifestyle change that is incredibly important to lead you down the path to control. But by taking your time and giving yourself the time to really make small changes, not only are you giving your body a chance to adjust, but you're also giving yourself a chance to adjust. And what I mean by that is, you may not realize it, but when you go to the grocery store, if you're trying to shop for all new kinds of foods, that alone can be overwhelming and frustrating. But by changing maybe just one meal a week, or even one food of a meal a week, like what I discussed earlier, that way when you're going to the grocery, instead of going to the donuts, you'll just have to try to find bananas if you haven't eaten them before. And then the week after, you'll just have to locate the decaf coffee, and so on and so forth. So just be sure to set yourself up to where it's slow progression and not all at once. Now, with all that nutrition kind of out of the way, you also want to keep in mind vitamin supplementation. And this is the second part to the nutrition. When I was younger, my mom always made sure, in addition to me taking a multivitamin, because it can be hard to get the appropriate amount of vitamins and minerals from your food anyway. So you always want to make sure to have a multivitamin every day. But there's 3 vitamins that you want to make sure that you are taking in on a daily basis, or whatever the prescribed amount is on the bottle, to help ensure that you're setting your nervous system up for the best opportunity to combat and control against your Tourette's or OCD, or even hyperactivity. And those 3 vitamins are vitamin B complex, vitamin E, and vitamin C. Now, what do they do? Well, the B complex, its main objectives within the body is to assist in electron transport, energy metabolism, neurotransmitter synthesis, and coenzymes functions. Really, all you need to take away is it helps in overall nerve cell function. And a great way to kind of conceptualize or understand what this means is look at your body as if it were a car engine. And the B complex was the oil within the engine itself. Now, for an engine to run at a consistent pace, not break down, and be able to run smoothly, you need to make sure that it has the appropriate amount of oil to lubricate all the moving parts within the engine. Likewise, the B complex is essentially a nervous system lubricant. So it helps ensure that all the nerves are firing appropriately, everything that needs to be created within the nerves to help with messaging and overall function is running smoothly. So the B complex again is really like a nervous system lubricant that you want to make sure is in your diet day in and day out. Now, the other two vitamins, the vitamin C and vitamin E, are antioxidants. And all you really need to know about them is an antioxidant itself is a substance that inhibits oxidation. Or oxidation is pretty much a breakdown of a system with, or like a cell within the system. And specifically, it's a substance such as vitamin C or E that removes potentially damaging oxidizing agents in a living organism. So going back to the example of the engine and the oil, you can kind of look at vitamin C and vitamin E also being the oil. And what the oil does in an engine is, in an engine, the parts are made out of really metal and aluminum. So whenever let's say a piece of metal somehow shears off or breaks off, like in a very tiny piece within the engine, that oil captures that little particulate. And when you change the oil, it removes it from the engine. So you're ensuring that any metal particulates that are developed over time from all these moving parts rubbing against each other, they're removed and they're not going to damage and scratch the system. Likewise, that's what vitamin C and vitamin E do, is they remove from your system any damaging particulates or any particulates that could potentially damage the nervous system. So that's why they're important to have to take in on a regular basis in addition to the vitamin B complex. Now that you got kind of an idea of the importance of nutrition and vitamin supplementation, keep in mind again that I feel that nutrition is the overall foundation. What you put into your body is truly what you get out. So by setting yourself up to where day in and day out you're eating the appropriate foods and vitamins, you're setting your body up for essentially setting your body up for the fight, for the day-to-day fight that you have to do to be able to overcome and control your Tourette's. So now that we have the foundation laid, the next thing I want to bring in is the concept of incorporating exercise into your daily life. Now, overall, what does the exercise do? Well, in a way, not to necessarily get philosophical on you, but when you're looking at Tourette's and OCD, you kind of have to picture it as the tics and the OCD compulsive disorder tendencies as being driven by a bad negative energy. And exercise at its core, what it does is help burn off that negative energy. So if you're ever feeling like, let's say you had a stressful day and you just feel like your tics or your OCD is wanting to burst out of you by the time you get out of school or work, what you do, instead of going home and maybe letting it express itself freely, you go to the gym and focus that negative energy on exercising. Now, how I came across this is my parents, when I was a kid, were always an advocate of me and my sisters being active. And through trial and error, they decided, or what I landed on that I enjoyed the most, because I tried doing soccer and basketball, but really I loved martial arts the most. And really one of the things that I loved about it was the fact that I could go in, and not only was it an incredibly physically demanding sport, but it also kind of had a philosophical side where I would mentally have to force myself to work on controlling my Tourette's. One of the things about the martial arts that I went to is there's certain time periods throughout class where you would have to stand still and listen to the instructor talk. And the thing that I really appreciated from my father that he did for me is, I remember one day he went into class because he would like to come in and just watch me from time to time doing the martial arts practicing. He talked to one of the heads of the instructors of the school and was honest with him. He told him, he's like, look, Dimitri has Tourette's, but that doesn't mean if he's having to stand still and he moves, even if it's a tic, you still punish him like you would any other student that happens to move when they're not supposed to. So still give him the push-ups, still give him the punishing, jumping jacks. and don't treat them any differently. And that was one thing I was always been grateful of, because that kind of helped set me up on my path towards trying to control my Tourette's, was by not being treated differently. But what kind of got me to realize that exercise really helped me is late middle school, early high school. I started realizing, I feel that as you get older as a child, you have the ability to self-reflect more. And I'm always an advocate of self-reflection. It's something I feel people like us who have our disorders need to do on a regular basis so we can really overcome these disorders and just realize, like, think about what affected me throughout the day. How can I either divert that energy or avoid that situation so my Tourette's or my OCD or even my hyperactivity doesn't come out and affect me the way it has in the past. But I started realizing that if I had a stressful day at school, when I went to martial arts practice and I put all that frustration and angst into punching as fast as I could, doing the push-ups as many times as I could, really just losing myself in the moment, when I got home, I would be too physically exhausted to want to tick anyway. And that is what led me towards the understanding of the relationship between needing to exercise on a regular basis and it helping me get rid of that negative energy that would normally want to express as a tic or an OCD incident. And for you, ultimately, what exercise, whether you are an exercise enthusiast already or you're somebody that hasn't incorporated much exercise into your daily life, I just mostly recommend something that you can at least lose yourself in. So it will take some trial and error on your part of trying different things, going to a local fitness, a gym or a studio, trying their cardio classes, trying their, maybe you like to ride a bike or you did when you were younger and you go in and do their bike riding classes and you find you really lose yourself in that. That's fine. I'm a huge advocate of martial arts because not only is it physically demanding, but it does again help you start develop that mental control of the disorder that we need in life. But really you just ultimately need to lose yourself in whatever activity it is, and that can help you along the way, because then you'll start being able to, once you start making that connection yourself of how good the exercise makes you feel before compared to after, then you'll start to be able to look forward to exercise at the end of the day and then start diverting that negative energy towards the exercise at hand. And that will also, like it did me, help you reduce the overall intensity of your disorder throughout the coming weeks when you're implementing your exercise. Now, kind of with that out of the way, we have nutrition as a foundation. We have exercise as kind of your regular, your secondary choice to being able to help reduce the intensity of the tics and the OCD when it comes out and feels like it needs to express itself. The third area is the meditation/relaxation methods. And this again is kind of like the last resort, because unlike exercise where you have to schedule it into your life, the meditational methods are something that you can take and use at any moment's notice. Because whether you're aware of it or not, Tourette's and OCD are very much so affected by stress, excitement, and anxiety. And whether or not it's a positive or negative feeling, like whether you're excited about something good that happened or you're anxious about something bad that happened, where our nervous systems are affected by that. And so by having these meditational methods, if you're at school and you're, stressed about an exam, or whether you're at work and you're stressed about maybe a presentation you have to give, having these in your tool belt of something you can do that is kind of private while at your desk or, wherever, will definitely greatly help you along the way. And there are for me, I kind of figured this out when I was in high school. The girlfriend I was dating at the time, this was my senior year of high school, she broke up with me and I was devastated. And of course, it didn't help any that I actually worked with her at the grocery store I was employed at in high school, which in hindsight was probably a bad idea. But, of course, I didn't think about it at the time. But I had to see her several days a week, and that was just emotionally straining. And I was already kind of getting into more of the, I want to say, the philosophical side of martial arts anyway, kind of delving into Tai Chi and yoga a little bit. And I started developing through some trial and error my own little meditational relaxation Tai Chi that I could do. So if I were to see her while working, I would go up to the employee bathroom area and just kind of practice these Tai Chi movements for a few minutes to help kind of refocus and get myself centered. So when I went back downstairs, I wouldn't feel like I was losing myself and going crazy. And by doing that, by the end of the night, instead of being a ball of stress where my Tourette's would really have to come out and just express itself in the car when I got home, the negative energy would kind of have been dissipated because I was able to have this go-to resource immediately instead of having to go to the gym maybe after work. Now, for you, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything like Tai Chi where there's any movement involved. You can start with simple breathing and relaxation methods. You know, there's a variety of methodologies out there that you can use as resources, and I have a few of them that I've tried that have worked for me that could be a good place for you to start. So some initial resources for relaxation, and there's, you know, websites. If you type into Google, just do a Google search on meditational methods or relaxation techniques, there's probably a plethora of resources also. These are the ones that I initially went to that I really found useful. And they are Simple Meditation and Relaxation by Joel and Michelle Levy, Stress Management Made Simple by Jay Winner, and Teach Yourself to Meditate by Eric Harrison. So start with these resources. Start just practicing, you know, whenever you feel like your Tourette's or OCD is kind of building up, kind of go to these and start utilizing them and seeing if they work for you. Now, distractions are the second part of the meditational / relaxation methods. And this is really where I kind of like to refer to it as the battlefield. The reason why is the distraction methods are meant to also help you in the moment utilize that negative energy that is building up and wanting to express itself as a tic and diverting that energy and burning up that energy. So by the time you're done doing the distraction method, you no longer have that negative energy in your body. So it's almost similar to kind of like the exercise method where you're waiting all day to go to the gym and burn off the negative energy, but instead you can use it in the moment and in a way in tandem with the meditational relaxation like breathing techniques to really fight the disorder while it's trying to bother you in the moment. So how does it work? Well, you essentially, if you look at the tic or the OCD-like tendency, and you consider it a simple straight line where the trigger is your desire to want to flip the switch or shake your head, and the relief is actually flipping the switch or shaking your head, that's kind of like the initial thought pattern for our disorders. Now, what the distraction does is it kind of bypasses this straight line to the simple relief. And like these circles, as you're distracting yourself, what you're doing is you're taking this big ball of negative energy and slowly using it up over a period of a few minutes where the energy is getting less and less, and eventually it gets to the point where you're not even really having a desire to want to do the tic or the obsessive movement. And it's something that takes time to implement, but the good example is the one that my mom taught me when I was younger, because she had Tourette's also, and this is something that helped her. She taught me that. She was like, Dimitri, whenever you feel a tic coming on, what you need to do is start wiggling your toes. And you need to just continue to focus on wiggling your toes until you get so tired that you don't want to wiggle them anymore, but force yourself through it and keep wiggling your toes until you absolutely can't anymore. And by doing that, again, you're taking that negative energy, refocusing it to doing something else like wiggling your toes and burning off that negative energy. So you would have actually done two things. One, like I mentioned, you burned off that negative energy, but two, you also would have distracted yourself from thinking about wanting to do the tic. And I don't know about you, but I know for myself, when I'm thinking about my disorder and wanting to tic, it's usually much more difficult for me to fight the disorder as compared to if I'm not thinking about my Tourette's, I'm not always necessarily actually doing the Tourette's itself, which is really odd. So if you're not thinking about it, it's not happening. Now, keep in mind, I have a moderate case of Tourette's. So my tics usually involved, again, the violent head shaking, blowing air through my nose, making snorting noises, having to hop on my one foot while I'm walking, kind of stuff like that. If you have a more severe case where you may even be on medication, keep in mind this is something that's going to take time, but it's way better to pick yourself up and start fighting against this disorder and getting control of it than staying on that medication, because I am a firm believer that medication is detrimental to your nervous system, like the Ritalin was. I wholeheartedly believe that Ritalin negatively stimulated my nervous system that brought out my Tourette's. And if you're on medication and you feel the same way, that maybe it's helping, but you can feel a change in your body, utilizing this methodology that I'm going over today, really all it breaks down to is taking better care of your body and then working to develop a mental defense against your Tourette's or OCD. And so how you want to implement this is you want to actually look at this as if you're building a resistive wall against your disorder. Now, what you want to do is when you first start this, just use the toe wiggling as a good start. Really you can use any repetitive movement. Like, let's say you like to wiggle a pencil back and forth in between your fingers. That's perfectly fine. It's just whatever repetitive movement that you can do that won't lead to it developing into a tic or an OCD desire. Because, you've probably experienced this if you specifically have Tourette's. When I'm around one of my friends that also has Tourette's, if we're not careful, we'll pick up on each other's tics and then start doing them. So you just want to be sure that it's a movement that won't become a tic. And for me, it definitely was the toe wiggling. So what you want to do when you start implementing this is when you feel a tic building up inside of your system, like you just feel like it's going to express and you can't take it, before you let it express, start focusing on wiggling your toes as violently and fast as you can for 2 seconds. And then once that 2 seconds is done, go on ahead and let your tic express itself. But now what you've done is you've set yourself up to where for 2 seconds you have control of your body as long as you're focusing on wiggling your toes. And now you've developed kind of a resistive wall that's 2 seconds long. And then you want to start focusing on going from 2 seconds and doubling that, and going to then 4 seconds and then letting your tic express itself, and then keep doing that to where it's from 4 seconds to 8 seconds, 8 to 16, and so on and so forth. Now, this may take several weeks. You may only be able to do 2 seconds for the first week or the first few weeks, but don't give up. That's the last thing you want to do, is give into this, because I'm a firm believer that no matter how severe your disorder is, you can have some form of control, whether it's just getting off the medication, not having to take as much medication, or getting to the point where if you have a moderate case, people can no longer even tell that you have Tourette's or OCD. That's the goal. I've did this so much, and when I was younger, I had a bad problem with being able to fall asleep. It would take me hours to fall asleep. Even if I was exhausted, I would go to bed and still just not be able to fall asleep for a few hours. So I used that time to fight my Tourette's and focus on wiggling my toes and develop this resistive wall. So when I would be going to school during the day, I would know that, for maybe a period of a few minutes, I would be able to successfully control the Tourette's, and I would have that focus kind of developed at night that I could then use throughout the day to help counteract and combat against my tics. Because it's now at the point where once you start focusing on controlling your Tourette's and really honing in on what muscles are even being affected, I can feel the tics building up in the muscle structures in my neck. So now that I can feel it building up, because in part that I was practicing this resistive wall building, I can now, when I feel it building up, what I do is I isometrically contract the muscles that I feel need to contract to shake my head left and right and up and down. And All the isometric contraction is it's just a squeezing of the muscle without actually moving the body part. So if you were ever to like flex your bicep, if you're, if you're like showing off for somebody, that's an isometric contraction. So now that I have done this resistive wall development and focus on what muscles are really affected, I feel the tics coming on. I isometrically contract the muscle. I squeeze that muscle, and what that does is that tricks my body into thinking that I actually did the full-fledged head shake without actually doing the movement at all. And that deflects the desire to want to do the tic to where I no longer even have to do the tic. I just isometrically contract the muscle, and then it goes away. So that's the whole goal, is to develop that resistive wall and then also focus on what muscles really are affected by the tics and seeing if you can squeeze those muscles instead to help diffuse the tic or the OCD while you are in the moment. So what does this all lead to? Well, it leads to all three areas ultimately lead to a reduction in intensity of your disorder. Again, whether you have a severe disorder or a moderate case, I do believe you can get some semblance of control or at least off some medication if you're struggling that bad with it. It gives you the ability to gain control in the fight against your disorder. If you've ever felt like you want to be in control of your body, you're the one that wants to decide what you do when and how you want to move and when, this gives you that ability to do so. And it also gives you the opportunity to change a negative situation to something positive. And what do I mean by that? Well, to be honest, you got to look at it as you don't have a disorder, you have a superpower. And the great example I like to use is I love comic book movies and comic books in general. And so if you've ever heard of or seen the movie series called X-Men, pretty much what it is there's a group of individuals there that have what's they consider mutated genes. Now, really, they're superpowers because people can like fly, they have super strength, they can shoot lasers out of their eyes. When they're first growing up, these superpowers are uncontrollable. So people will, the laser shooting out of this one guy's eyes, his name is Cyclops, he can't control it. But by going to this school that's called Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, he learns how to control his laser eyes so he can then decide when and when not to let the lasers come out when he needs to use it in a fight. And, of course, society thinks they're a disorder and they're freaks, but really it's just their power is uncontrolled and they have to go through the necessary steps, like what I discussed today with you, on how to gain control of your superpower. Because whether you realize it or not, you have a lot of characteristics that are highly sought after that a lot of people don't have in life. And let me give you an example. So I mentioned earlier that I had OCD-like tendencies when I was younger. When I were to go to bed every night, and excuse me, I just need to take a quick drink. Okay, when I were to go to bed at night, before I went to bed, I would have to, and keep in mind, part of the issue was that my bedroom had two closet doors that both swung open and shut. So I would have to flip the lights on in this order, flip the lights on and off in my room 5 times, check both closets, so open and close each door 5 times. When I got into bed, I would have to turn the lamp, my reading lamp next to my bed on and off 5 times. I would have to say my prayers 5 times and then count backwards from 5 to 0 5 times. Now, just not taking into consideration just the sheer amount of insanity it takes to be able to do that day in and day out on a monthly, if not yearly basis, the characteristics needed to be able to do something like that without flinching, without making a mistake, every day takes an extreme focus, endurance, patience, drive, a tenacity, and an incredible will to never give up. Not many people have that in life. We have those characteristics. And what you hopefully have realized after going through this presentation is you develop and hone these characteristics by doing these day-to-day things, by changing your nutritional habits, by exercising, by self-reflecting and figuring out how to focus that negative energy that normally expresses itself as a tick and using it to exercise, using it to wiggle your toes. You're honing and developing these successful qualities you're forging them in the fire of our disorders. So by the time you've gained control of your disorder, you may not have realized it, but you would have developed these characteristics so much that you can then focus these same characteristics to other aspects of your life, whether it's going to school, getting a degree in college, cracking down at work and really getting work done and seeking out and earning that next career advancement, obtaining some athletic award, whatever it is. These are the exact same qualities you need to be successful in life, and you have the opportunity to develop them against the disorders that we carry around on our shoulders every day. And there's similar people in life that have been incredibly successful that have the exact same characteristics and qualities that we have. The one difference is they didn't have the benefit to be able to develop these against something as difficult as our disorders. Because I truly believe that, and it's been said before, that strength is developed through hardship. And because we have such a hard, long road to being able to control our disorders, we have such a great opportunity to hone these characteristics and use them to our advantage. So there's a couple of examples I want you to keep in mind of people who have similar characteristics that have gone on to do great things. Michael Jordan is the first one. Keep in mind he does not have OCD or Tourette's in any way, but he was cut from his basketball team when he was younger, and he went on to be one of the most successful basketball sports players of all time. And he wouldn't have been able to do it without the same characteristics that we have, the tenacity, the will, the drive. But a good question to keep in mind is, do you at all think that he could do what we do every day? Like the example that I gave. Do you think before he went to bed, would he be able to every night for a year flip the light switch 5 times, check the doors 5 times, say his prayers 5 times and count backwards 5 times without flinching? No. He's one of the greatest basketball players of all time, but I do not think he could do what we do every day. Bruce Lee is another great example and one of my personal heroes. He moved over to America from Asia at a time when, for whatever reason, Asians were looked down upon, and he was in part one of the reasons why the Asian culture is more revered and highly regarded than what it was back then. He had to overcome a lot of his own strife and struggles and is considered to this day one of the most amazing martial artists ever. But again, there's no way that I feel like Bruce Lee, no matter how great of a martial artist and philosopher he was, would be able to do what we do every day. So we have a certain extreme focus that not even the great Bruce Lee has. And the last guy that I wanted to bring up is Warren Buffett. Just today is revered to be one of the greatest businessmen of all time, and he would not have gotten where he is today without the same characteristics we have. The one difference is it's just ours is packaged differently. We just have to focus and hone it in by first overcoming our disorders and then utilizing them in life and obtain whatever goals we desire. So be proud of the disorders that you have. Don't hide the fact from people that you have a disorder that you have been struggling with, because now is the time that you can stand up, utilize the tools and methods that I discussed today, and start gaining control in the fight. And show you're proud. There's no reason to hide who you are. And it also, the more you talk about it with people, the more they'll start understanding what it is you're going through. So if they ever come across somebody in life that has the similar disorder we have, they'll treat them in a more positive light than what they may have before they met you. So you have an opportunity to utilize and purchase this t-shirt line that I have. And I got to tell you, when I wear these, they are definitely conversation starters. It gives you the opportunity to talk and interact with people in your community and be that beacon of hope for others in your area that struggle with our disorders by just letting people know that just because you're obsessed, it does not mean that you're in any way different, and it doesn't mean that you feel like you're a failure. Be proud of your obsession. Be proud of the opportunity that's been set in front of you of being able to overcome something so great, forging this strength that you have inside you to be able to then overcome it and obtain that next step in life, whatever it may be. And if you're at my website now looking, reviewing this presentation, all you got to do is scroll down below the presentation window itself, and the shirts are down there. And note that a portion of each shirt sold, I'm going to give back to the Tourette's Association of America and the International OCD Foundation. So by you purchasing the shirts, we're then in turn giving back to the organizations that will continue to fight for not only rights for us, but also help people overcome their disorders like I'm hoping to help you today. And if you're at a different website, you just got to go down the link at the bottom, which is oniscoconcepts.com/free Tourette's resource to be able to pick up one of these shirts. And they do come in a variety of colors and sizes. So it's not just t-shirts, it's also tank tops, long sleeves, sweatshirts. So it gives you a variety of options to choose from. And the last thing I wanted to mention is the whole reason why I wanted to name my company Onisco Concepts and Design is I love the fact that the acronym is OCD. And it's not to poke fun or make fun of anybody. It's just, it is so awesome to reflect back on my life and realize that I now have control of a disorder that I struggled with so many years. So likewise, how the disorder had control of me when I was younger, I now have control of my company. That's, the acronym is OCD. So I tell it what to do every day. It doesn't tell me. And that's kind of where the whole acronym and the name comes into play anyway. So definitely just be proud of where you are and know that you're not alone and you can overcome this. It is possible no matter what anybody says. You have the fire inside of you to get through this. So I want to thank you for watching my presentation. Please let anybody else know if they're struggling with this like you are. Send them the link to my webpage so they can review the same information and pick themselves up and start fighting against this disorder to gain control. If you have any questions, reach out to me at oniscoconcepts@gmail.com. Or if you want to go to my Facebook page to let me know how you're doing and how you're struggling or how you've improved, the link for my Facebook page is just at the bottom of this webpage that you're reviewing the presentation on. So this is Dimitri with OCD LLC, and thank you for your time.